a girl behind you.
Oh my god, my cat is...
So what's up, y'all? It is, I guess, the first real kind of overview, or at least weekly overview of how training is going in preparation for the Texas State Championship meet at TSS here, what was it, like January 18th and 19th, that weekend. So as of the time of recording, we are 87 days out, but the footage that we're going to be going over in today's video is from the previous week. So at the time of recording all this, we're at about 13 weeks out and things are starting to look pretty decent. So I'm not really going to be going over the first 2 weeks of the block just because my blocks are structured where we've got 5 weeks of training, the first week being a deload. So come on, dude, like, it's not terribly interesting. And the second week, you know, we're just coming off a deload, so we're still kind of in sleep mode. But this week's footage is week 3 out of 5. So this is where we're kind of starting to pick up a little bit. And as I'm recording all this right now, like Tuesday the 22nd. So I just hit my primary squat for week 4. Like, I'm starting to see how this is going to go and I'm pretty excited. But getting into week 3. So for week 3, we ended up with a 573 primary squat, a 672 primary deadlift, and a 380 primary bench. And then also on the secondary bench, we ended up with a 353 double. So we're calculating just like a weekly total based off of our singles. We're looking right at around 737.5, which decent spot for where we're at in the block. As we finish out the block anyway, we're supposed to end up with a PR total of about 815 kilos, which puts me 15 kilos over my best total so far. And doing this, you know, like 12 plus weeks out from the meet, or at least talking about at this point in time where we're 12 weeks out. Pretty excited to see what I could actually end up with on the platform. Definitely feeling optimistic, especially after not having competed since about like September of last year. So just seeing that progression is really cool. Like, finally getting kind of the delayed gratification, and instead of just delaying it, we're actually getting the gratification. It's kind of nice. I might want to consider not taking forever to compete again next time, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So when we just kind of break down our lifts piece by piece here, the 573 squat was borderline mindless. Like, given recent training, this is something that I've now hit for like multiple reps, and I kind of feel that way about most of what I put up over the course of this week. Like, none of this felt particularly intimidating to load, which is, it's kind of nice if we're being completely honest. Like, especially given the fact that I'm going to be competing at 110, I feel like I should have that kind of relationship with these numbers now, where this isn't so much of a challenge. It's just more of, you know, like, hit this at RPE 7 and go on with your life. Like, don't marinate on it too much, because this shouldn't be that hard. And, you know, as the weight's going to get heavier, that mentality is definitely going to have to shift. And people always talk about respect the weight, but, you know where your challenge should be anyway. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. We're just trying to approach each session with, you know, effective execution. Going from squat to bench, I feel that my bench is easily the strongest it's ever been. Like, just wrapping up my first real block with Carrington, we managed to hit, like, I think I matched my all-time bench PR. And from there, it's just been like 2.5 kilo chips here and there. And also, you know, introducing some variation with like 3 count pauses on those heavier singles, and now bringing it back down to like 2 count or just more comp. So that way it's a bit more transferable. And like I said, progression when you've been kind of like hitting your head against a wall for so long, just like chipping away at the same thing, going like, okay, why, when, how, what will it take for me to like see something? Just delayed gratification out the ass. Like, I feel so happy to be where I'm at and doing it without, you know, dealing with injury, which has been a big deal for me. Especially since like my previous injuries held me back for so long. Now we're at a point where we're not being held back. So I'm just looking forward to being able to, bring whatever I can to the platform here in a few weeks. And then if we keep it moving on to deads, 672, I feel like I've been almost married to this number for some time. Like, it's just one of those numbers that you constantly deal with, where it could be a set of like 2 or 3. In this case, it's just a single, not a particularly high exertion single, so it's nice, and it definitely gives me some confidence going into the next week, where I'm supposed to be hitting up to 705 and then wrapping up the block with up to 750. Now, 750 is not a PR, but I'll be hitting PRs on everything else, so I'll take that. Like, we're in a good position. But deadlift, especially since getting to the point where I'm kind of moving up in the weight class, I'm starting to get an understanding of how your leverages can kind of fight against you while you're gaining weight in powerlifting. 'Cause I had never really gotten to the position where it's like, okay, cool, I put on a couple of keys and now this movement is more challenging. It used to just only kind of increase how strong I was feeling. And, throughout the sport over the, 7 years, I went from like competing at 83 to competing at 110. It's a fair amount of weight gained. So to get this far and it just now being something that could be of concern, it's like, okay, this is cool, but definitely wish I probably considered this a little bit earlier. I don't know. It's something to deal with, but there's always going to be something, so it'll be all right. I'll take the strength gains. That's totally fine as well. So in light of talking about just my own issues within training and how I've been dealing with some challenges along the lines of deadlifts, most importantly, with, moving into the 110 weight class, I do want to talk about a post from Rob Escalante earlier this week. So I'm going to throw up the video with some Subway Surfers just so y'all don't leave and my viewer retention starts to plummet. And then afterwards, I just kind of want to talk about what I was thinking about while seeing this post.
Something that's been on my mind recently that I think I've really wanted to talk about is the fact that I think a lot of people are starting to catastrophize bad reps or bad sets in training with this whole, like, it's over, we're so back mentality. And what I mean by that is kind of in line with this conversation I had with one of my, oh my God, my cat is tweaking. He's tweaking. Anyways, it falls in line with this conversation that I had with a kid yesterday, where he failed a top single and he was asking me like, hey, what does this mean for my meet? And I was like, okay, let's take a step back and look at your entire prep. Have you gotten stronger over this prep? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay, so do you think that this one rep, this one squat rep designates 4 to 8 to 12 to 16 weeks of preparation as a failure? And he looked at me and he just said no. And that's the cold hard truth. That one failed rep at the end of a week 4, or that one rep that didn't move exactly how you wanted it to, does not mean that you did not prepare well and you did not get stronger over 4, 12, 16, even an entire off season of multiple macro cycles compiled together. We need to stop having this catastrophic mentality. It's not over. Like, you've been here the entire time. I promise you that.
So the most major takeaway when watching Rob's video, for me anyway, was just because you had like one failed set or just one rep that didn't work out too well does not mean that, all of this time spent preparing and training leading up to that was a complete waste. I've been dealing with more difficulty when it came to just locking out deadlifts now that I'm at a higher body weight. And so personally, I didn't really consider the end of my previous block a success. I hit 694 for, I believe, a triple. But the lockout on rep number 3 was really not something that I believe to be ideal. It's not something that I held long enough for me to consider, like, if we isolated that rep out and, that was a rep that I was hitting on the platform. That's not something that would get a down command. That's not something that I think would get 3 whites. But that does not mean that all of the training that led up to it was for nothing. That does not mean that I'm not necessarily getting stronger or improving in any specific way. It just could mean that at that point in time, I probably just wasn't executing well enough or just didn't have enough on that day. And the end of the previous block on its own is kind of like a special case because I wasn't executing my primary deadlift on the day that I normally would, and some things were just a bit different. Now, at the end of the day, these things happen sometimes, and it's just important to note that even though in this case it probably didn't go the best way possible, if you just keep going and you just keep trying, maybe even try a little bit harder, it's not going to be the end of the world. You're going to be moving past this. You're going to be progressing past all this. And so that's just something that I'm going to try to be mindful of for the duration of this prep, because we still got quite a bit to go and there's still a fair amount of, I guess, room for me to push, just relative to what I feel like my ceiling could be at the end of the prep. I can't see into the future, and I don't know how far we can go, but I know I'm just going to keep trying. So that will be it for this week's video. See y'all next week where we get to overview week 4, and yeah, have a good one.